Question 1. Consider a large manufacturing firm that has recently undergone its first surveillance audit against ISO 45001-2018. While the audit report highlights the establishment of an OH&S management system, a recurring theme in the auditor's observations pertains to the perceived lack of proactive engagement from operational staff in identifying and reporting potential OH&S improvements. The management team is seeking to cultivate a more robust culture of continual improvement, moving beyond mere compliance. Which of the following strategies would most effectively embed a commitment to ongoing OH&S enhancement throughout the organization, aligning with the spirit of ISO 45001-2018? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of all existing OH&S policies and procedures, updating them based on the latest legal requirements and industry standards, and communicating these changes through internal memos. Option B. Establish a dedicated cross-functional OH&S improvement team, empowered to investigate reported issues, develop innovative solutions, and champion the implementation of best practices, with regular reporting to senior management and visible recognition for contributions. Option C. Mandate that all employees attend a mandatory annual refresher training session on OH&S procedures and reporting requirements, with a focus on the consequences of non-compliance. Option D. Implement a system for anonymous suggestion boxes placed at key locations throughout the facility, with a commitment to review submissions quarterly and provide general feedback on implemented ideas. The correct answer is B. Establish a dedicated cross-functional OH&S improvement team, empowered to investigate reported issues, develop innovative solutions, and champion the implementation of best practices, with regular reporting to senior management and visible recognition for contributions. Explanation: the principle of continual improvement within ISO 45001-2018, as detailed in Clause 10. 3. Necessitates a proactive approach to enhancing the occupational health and safety O&S management system. This involves systematically identifying opportunities for improvement, implementing changes, and evaluating their effectiveness. A key element in fostering this culture is the integration of feedback mechanisms that encourage all levels of the organization to contribute to OH&S performance enhancement. This includes learning from incidents, near misses, and audit findings, as well as actively seeking suggestions from workers on how to prevent injuries and ill health. The leadership plays a crucial role in championing this continuous journey by allocating resources, setting objectives, and demonstrating a commitment to evolving OH&S practices. Without a structured process for capturing, analyzing, and acting upon improvement suggestions, the organization risks stagnation, failing to adapt to changing hazards, legal requirements, or best practices, thereby undermining the very purpose of an OH&S management system. The emphasis is on a dynamic system that evolves rather than remains static. Question 2. Following a significant merger where an established manufacturing firm has acquired a smaller logistics company operating in a different region with distinct transportation safety regulations, what is the most critical consideration for the lead implementer when advising top management on revising the organization's existing OH&S policy to comply with ISO 45001-2018 requirements? Option A. Incorporating general statements about workplace safety that are broad enough to encompass all merged operations, without specifying particular risks or regulatory compliance. Option B. Ensuring the revised policy explicitly addresses the expanded scope of operations, new hazard categories introduced by the acquired entity, and commitment to fulfilling all applicable legal and other requirements for both original and newly integrated activities. Option C. Focusing solely on the financial implications of implementing new OH&S controls for the acquired logistics operations, as this is a primary driver for management. Option D. Prioritizing the communication of the existing policy to all employees of the merged entity, assuming it will be sufficient given the overarching commitment to safety. The correct answer is B. Ensuring the revised policy explicitly addresses the expanded scope of operations, new hazard categories introduced by the acquired entity, and commitment to fulfilling all applicable legal and other requirements for both original and newly integrated activities. Explanation: the development of an OH&S policy under ISO 45001-2018 is a foundational step that requires careful consideration of the organization's context, legal and other requirements, and the needs and expectations of interested parties. Clause 5. 2. One of the standard mandates that the OH&S policy shall be appropriate to the purpose and context of the organization. Provide a framework for setting OH&S objectives. Include a commitment to the prevention of work-related injury and ill health, and include a commitment to fulfilling applicable legal and other requirements. It also requires a commitment to continual improvement of the OH&S management system. When an organization is established or undergoes significant changes, such as a merger or acquisition, the OH&S policy must be reviewed and potentially revised to ensure its continued relevance and effectiveness. This review should involve top management and consider the new organizational structure, operational activities, potential new hazards, and updated legal obligations. For instance, if a company acquires another with different primary operations or operating in a jurisdiction with more stringent safety regulations, the existing policy might not adequately cover these new aspects. The policy must also be communicated effectively to all levels within the organization and to workers, and made available to interested parties as appropriate. A policy that fails to acknowledge the expanded scope of operations and the associated new risks after a merger would be considered inadequate because it does not provide a framework for managing these new realities and does not demonstrate a commitment to addressing the specific hazards introduced by the acquired entity. Therefore, the most critical factor in revising the policy in such a scenario is ensuring it reflects the updated organizational context and its associated OH&S risks and legal obligations. Question 3. When establishing the framework for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation under ISO 45001-2018, an organization is tasked with determining the necessary parameters to assess the effectiveness of its OHS management system. Considering the broad scope of the standard and the need for actionable insights, which of the following approaches best aligns with the intent of Clause 9? 1. Regarding the determination of what needs to be monitored and measured. Option A. Solely focusing on lagging indicators such as incident frequency rates and the number of reported near misses to gauge historical OHS performance. Option B. Prioritizing the measurement of leading indicators that predict future OHS performance and evaluating the effectiveness of implemented risk control measures against established criteria. Option C. Measuring only those parameters explicitly listed as mandatory requirements within ISO 45001-2018, without considering organizational context or specific OHS objectives. Option D. Conducting detailed statistical analysis of all available data, regardless of its relevance to OHS performance, to identify any potential correlations. The correct answer is B. Prioritizing the measurement of leading indicators that predict future OHS performance and evaluating the effectiveness of implemented risk control measures against established criteria. Explanation: ISO 45001-2018 Clause 9. 1. General mandates that an organization shall determine what needs to be monitored and measured, the methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation needed to ensure valid results, when the monitoring and measuring shall be performed, and when the results shall be analyzed and evaluated. This clause emphasizes the need for a systematic approach to gather data on the performance and effectiveness of the OHS management system. The key is to ensure that the monitoring and measurement activities are aligned with the organization's OHS policy and objectives, and that they provide reliable information for decision-making. This includes tracking progress towards objectives, identifying trends, and assessing the effectiveness of controls. The analysis and evaluation of this data are crucial for understanding the organization's OHS performance and for driving continual improvement. For instance, if an organization sets an objective to reduce lost time injuries by 10%, it must monitor incident rates, analyze the causes of these incidents, and evaluate the effectiveness of corrective actions taken. This iterative process of monitoring, analysis, and evaluation is fundamental to the OHS management system's ability to achieve its intended outcomes and prevent work-related injury and ill health. The organization must also consider legal and other requirements when determining what to monitor and measure. Question 4. A manufacturing company, Innovate Solutions, is undergoing its initial ISO 45001-2018 certification audit. During the audit, The auditor questions the clarity of accountability for hazard identification and risk assessment processes within the production department. While the safety officer is responsible for overseeing the OH&S management system, the production floor supervisors are directly involved in daily operations and are best positioned to identify immediate hazards. However, the audit report notes a lack of explicit documented authority for these supervisors to formally halt production processes based on identified immediate risks, pending a full risk assessment. Considering the requirements of ISO 45001-2018, what is the most critical deficiency identified in Innovate Solutions' approach to OH&S roles, responsibilities, and authorities in this scenario? Option A. Absence of a formal job description for the safety officer that clearly delineates all OH&S responsibilities. Option B. Insufficient documented authority for production supervisors to stop unsafe work activities, thereby undermining the proactive hazard control mechanism. Option C. Lack of a comprehensive training program for all employees on general OH&S principles, irrespective of their specific roles. Option D. Incomplete records of safety committee meeting minutes, which are not a primary requirement for defining individual roles. The correct answer is B. Insufficient documented authority for production supervisors to stop unsafe work activities, thereby undermining the proactive hazard control mechanism. Explanation: the core principle of establishing roles, responsibilities, and authorities within an ISO 45001-2018 management system is to ensure clear accountability for OH&S performance. Clause 5.3. Organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities mandates that top management must ensure that OH&S responsibilities and authorities are assigned, communicated, and understood throughout the organization. This involves defining who is accountable for what aspects of the OH&S management system, including planning, implementation, operation, and improvement. It is not sufficient to simply assign tasks. Individuals must also have the necessary authority to carry out their responsibilities effectively. This includes the authority to stop unsafe work, to report hazards, and to participate in decision-making related to OH&S. Furthermore, the standard requires that these roles, responsibilities, and authorities are documented and communicated. The effectiveness of the OH&S management system hinges on individuals at all levels understanding their contributions and having the empowerment to act in accordance with the system's objectives. This proactive approach to defining and communicating roles fosters a culture of safety and ensures that OH&S is integrated into all organizational processes. Question 5. A manufacturing firm operating in a jurisdiction with stringent regulations on workplace noise levels, as stipulated by the National Occupational Safety and Health Act, has implemented a range of engineering controls and administrative procedures to mitigate noise exposure. To ensure ongoing adherence to these legal mandates, what is the most effective approach for the organization's OHS lead implementer to verify compliance during a routine internal audit? Option A. Examining the frequency of management meetings where safety performance is discussed, without specific focus on noise control effectiveness. Option B. Conducting a detailed review of the organization's established hazard control measures against the latest national permissible exposure limits for airborne particulates. Option C. Comparing the number of reported near misses related to machinery operation with the previous year's figures to gauge overall safety improvement. Option D. Verifying that all workers have received general safety awareness training, irrespective of specific noise exposure risks. The correct answer is B. Conducting a detailed review of the organization's established hazard control measures against the latest national permissible exposure limits for airborne particulates. Explanation: the process of evaluating compliance with legal and other requirements under ISO 45001-2018 involves a systematic approach. Initially, an organization must identify all applicable legal requirements and other requirements it commits to, such as industry standards or voluntary codes of conduct. This identification is an ongoing process, as legislation and organizational commitments can change. Following identification, the organization needs to establish methods for accessing these requirements and ensuring their current status. The core of compliance evaluation is determining how these requirements are met within the organization's operations and management system. This involves comparing the organization's current practices, policies, and procedures against the identified legal and other requirements. The evaluation should cover aspects like hazard identification and risk assessment, operational controls, emergency preparedness, worker participation, and management review, among others. The frequency and methodology of these evaluations should be documented and appropriate to the organization's context and the nature of the requirements. For instance, a change in a national safety regulation concerning exposure limits for a specific chemical would necessitate a review of the organization's air monitoring program, ventilation systems, and worker health surveillance. The outcome of this evaluation is to confirm whether the organization is meeting its obligations and to identify any nonconformities, which then trigger corrective actions. Therefore, a comprehensive review of the organization's established hazard control measures against the latest national permissible exposure limits for airborne particulates is a direct method of assessing compliance with legal requirements. Question 6. Consider a manufacturing facility that plans to introduce a new automated robotic arm for a previously manual assembly task. The organization has conducted a preliminary hazard identification and risk assessment, but the process for managing this specific change has not been fully integrated into the established OH and S management system's documented procedures. Which of the following actions would best align with the requirements of ISO 45001, 2018, Clause 8? 1. 3. Management of change to ensure the safe introduction of this new equipment. Option A. Proceed with the installation of the robotic arm as planned, and then initiate a post-implementation review to identify any OH and S issues that may have arisen. Option B. Rely solely on the manufacturer's safety guidelines for the robotic arm and assume that existing general safety training is sufficient for operators. Option C. Document the change in the organization's operational logbook and inform the OH and S committee verbally about the new equipment during their next scheduled meeting. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive OH and S review of the new robotic arms integration, including its impact on existing workflows, potential new hazards, e.g., pinch points, electrical hazards, and the adequacy of proposed control measures before final implementation. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive OH and S review of the new robotic arms integration, including its impact on existing workflows, potential new hazards, e.g., pinch points, electrical hazards, and the adequacy of proposed control measures before final implementation. Explanation. The core principle of management of change, MOC, within ISO 45001, 2018 is to ensure that proposed changes do not inadvertently introduce new hazards or increase existing risks to occupational health and safety, ONS. Clause 8. 1. 3. Management of change mandates that an organization shall establish a process to implement and control planned changes that affect OH and S performance. This includes changes to work processes, work equipment, the work environment, organizational structure, legal requirements, knowledge or information about hazards and risks, and developments in OH and S knowledge and technology. Process should involve identifying potential OH and S consequences of the change, assessing these consequences, and implementing controls to mitigate any adverse effects before the change is introduced. Furthermore, the process should consider the implications of the change on the OH and S management system itself, including documentation, training, and communication. The objective is to proactively manage the OH and S risks associated with changes, rather than reacting to incidents that may arise from poorly managed changes. This proactive approach is fundamental to achieving continual improvement in OH and S performance and preventing occupational injuries and ill health. Question 7. Consider a manufacturing facility that produces specialized industrial chemicals. Recent hazard identification activities have revealed a significant risk of a catastrophic chemical spill involving highly volatile substances. In developing the emergency preparedness and response plan for this scenario, which of the following actions would be the most critical first step to ensure compliance with ISO 45001-2018 and the effective mitigation of this specific risk? Option A. Establishing clear communication channels with local emergency services, including fire departments and hazardous materials response teams, and defining their roles and responsibilities during a chemical spill event. Option B. Conducting a comprehensive review of all existing safety data sheets, SDS, for the volatile chemicals to confirm handling and storage protocols are up to date. Option C. Procuring specialized personal protective equipment, PPE, for all personnel who might be involved in responding to a chemical spill, such as chemical-resistant suits and self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA. Option D. Implementing a rigorous training program for all employees on general emergency evacuation procedures and the location of emergency exits. Correct answer is A. Establishing clear communication channels with local emergency services, including fire departments and hazardous materials response teams, and defining their roles and responsibilities during a chemical spill event. Explanation: the development of effective emergency preparedness and response plans under ISO 45001-2018 requires a systematic approach that considers the organization's specific context, potential hazards, and legal obligations. Clause 8.2 of the Standard, Emergency Preparedness and Response, mandates that an organization shall establish, implement, and maintain processes to prepare for and respond to potential emergency situations. This involves identifying potential emergency scenarios, developing procedures to prevent or mitigate them, establishing response actions, providing training, conducting drills, and periodically reviewing and revising the plans. A critical aspect is ensuring that the plans are aligned with the organization's identified hazards and risks, and that they take into account relevant legislative and other requirements pertaining to emergency situations, such as local fire codes, hazardous material regulations, and workplace safety laws. The effectiveness of these plans is contingent upon their practicality, the availability of necessary resources, and the competency of personnel involved in their execution. The process should also include communication protocols to inform relevant stakeholders, both internal and external, during an emergency. The integration of emergency preparedness with the overall OH&S management system, including hazard identification, risk assessment, and management review, is paramount for its success. The intent is not merely to document procedures, but to foster a culture of preparedness and ensure the organization can effectively manage unforeseen events to minimize harm to people and property. Question 8. A manufacturing plant utilizes a solvent in its cleaning process that emits hazardous fumes, posing a significant inhalation risk to workers. The organization has implemented engineering controls such as enhanced ventilation and administrative controls including mandatory work rotation to limit individual exposure duration. However, residual risk remains, and workers are still required to wear respirators during specific tasks. Which control measure, if successfully implemented, would represent the highest level of effectiveness in the hierarchy of controls for this specific hazard? Option A. Implementing a job rotation schedule to minimize individual worker exposure time. Option B. Requiring workers to wear high-efficiency particulate air (HEPA) filter respirators during all cleaning operations. Option C. Replacing the hazardous solvent with a non-volatile, water-based cleaning agent. Option D. Installing additional local exhaust ventilation systems at key emission points. Correct answer is C. Replacing the hazardous solvent with a non-volatile, water-based cleaning agent. Explanation: the hierarchy of controls is a fundamental principle in occupational health and safety management systems, aiming to eliminate or reduce hazards. ISO 45001-2018 Clause 8. 1. 2. Hazard identification and risk assessment requires organizations to establish, implement, and maintain a process for hazard identification, risk assessment, and determining applicable controls. The hierarchy prioritizes controls from most effective to least effective: elimination, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, and personal protective equipment, PPE. Elimination involves removing the hazard entirely. Substitution replaces the hazard with a less hazardous alternative. Engineering controls isolate people from the hazard, such as ventilation systems or machine guarding. Administrative controls change the way people work, like work procedures or training. PPE is the last resort, protecting the worker with equipment. When assessing the effectiveness of controls for a specific hazard, a lead implementer must consider the feasibility, sustainability, and overall impact on worker safety and operational efficiency. A scenario involving chemical exposure in a manufacturing setting would typically involve evaluating controls in this order. For instance, if a process uses a volatile solvent, the most effective control would be to eliminate its use or substitute it with a water-based cleaner. If that's not feasible, engineering controls like local exhaust ventilation would be considered next. Administrative controls might include limiting exposure time or establishing strict handling procedures. Finally, appropriate respiratory protection would be mandated as PPE if residual risk remains. The effectiveness of each level is judged by its ability to reduce the likelihood and severity of harm, with higher levels offering greater inherent protection and less reliance on human behavior. Question 9. When initiating the development of an occupational health and safety management system conforming to ISO 45001-2018, what is the fundamental prerequisite that underpins the entire system's establishment and subsequent effectiveness? Option A. The development of a detailed policy statement explicitly outlining zero harm as the organization's ultimate goal. Option B. The formal appointment of a dedicated OH&S manager with extensive prior experience in regulatory compliance. Option C. The establishment of measurable OH&S performance targets, such as a 15% reduction in incident rates within the first year. Option D. A comprehensive analysis of the organization's internal and external context to identify relevant OH&S issues and opportunities. The correct answer is D. A comprehensive analysis of the organization's internal and external context to identify relevant OH&S issues and opportunities. Explanation. The question asks about the primary driver for establishing an occupational health and safety (O&S) management system in accordance with ISO 45001-2018. ISO 45001-2018, particularly Clause 4. 1. Understanding the organization and its context, emphasizes that an organization needs to determine external and internal issues relevant to its purpose and its strategic direction that affect its ability to achieve the intended outcome of its OH&S management system. This understanding is foundational to establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving the OH&S management system. Clause 5. 1. Leadership and worker participation also highlights the commitment of top management to establishing and maintaining an OH&S policy and OH&S objectives. However, the initial and overarching driver for building the system itself stems from understanding the organization's context and the need to address OH&S risks and opportunities within that context to achieve its purpose. This involves considering legal and other requirements, Clause 6, 1-3, and the needs and expectations of workers and other interested parties, Clause 4, 2. Therefore, the most fundamental driver is the systematic identification and understanding of these contextual factors and their impact on OH&S performance, which then informs the establishment of the system to manage these. The other options, while important aspects of an OH&S management system, are consequences or components of this foundational understanding and commitment, rather than the primary driver for establishing the system itself. For example, demonstrating compliance with specific legal requirements is a part of managing the OH&S context, but the overall system establishment is broader than just one set of legal obligations. Similarly, achieving specific performance targets is an outcome of an effective system, not its initial establishment driver. Question 10. A manufacturing firm in Germany, operating under the German Occupational Safety and Health Act Arbeitsschutzgesetz, is required by the Berufsgenossenschaft (BG) to retain records of workplace risk assessments for a minimum of 5 years. During an internal audit of their ISO 45001-2018 compliant OH&S management system, it is discovered that some older risk assessment documents, originally stored on a legacy server that has since been decommissioned, are now inaccessible. These documents are critical for demonstrating compliance with legal requirements for the period they cover, which aspect of documented information control, as per ISO 45001-2018, has been most significantly overlooked in this scenario. Option A. Establishing and maintaining documented information that the organization deems necessary for the effectiveness of the OH&S management system. Option B. Ensuring documented information is retained is protected against loss, inappropriate use, and degradation. Option C. Maintaining documented information that is appropriate for the medium used for its creation and storage. Option D. Ensuring documented information is identified and legible. The correct answer is B. Ensuring documented information is retained is protected against loss, inappropriate use, and degradation. Explanation. ISO 45001-2018 Clause 7. 5. Documented information outlines the requirements for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving an occupational health and safety management system. Specifically, Clause 7.5.3 addresses control of documented information. This control ensures that documented information is available where and when it is needed, and that it is suitably protected. Protection includes aspects like prevention of unauthorized access, misuse, or loss. When an organization needs to retain documented information for legal or regulatory purposes, such as maintaining accident investigation records for a specified period, as mandated by national legislation like the UK's RIDOR, reporting of injuries, diseases, and dangerous occurrences regulations, it must ensure this information is retained in a suitable format and location. The standard requires appropriate identification, format, media, review and approval for competence and suitability, and clear controls for changes. The core principle is to ensure that the necessary documented information for the OH&S management system is properly managed throughout its life cycle, including its retention for specified periods. Question probes the understanding of how legal retention requirements integrate with the general controls of documented information under ISO 45001/2018. Retaining documented information for legal compliance is a specific application of the broader control requirements for documented information. This involves ensuring the information is accessible, protected, and managed appropriately for the duration mandated by law, which is a key aspect of legal and other requirements that an OH&S management system must address. Question 11. A manufacturing facility operating under strict adherence to the principles of ISO 45001/2018 is reviewing its worker involvement mechanisms. Management proposes to limit worker participation in the hazard identification process to only those employees who have completed a specialized, advanced safety training course. This approach is intended to ensure that only qualified individuals contribute to identifying potential risks, which fundamental aspect of effective worker involvement, as outlined in ISO 45001/2018, is being undermined by this proposed limitation. Option A. Guaranteeing that only workers with a certified safety background are involved in the risk assessment phase to maintain the integrity of the data. Option B. Mandating that worker feedback on OSM's performance is solely collected through anonymous surveys to prevent undue influence. Option C. Ensuring participation is accessible and inclusive to all workers, regardless of their specific training level, to leverage their direct experience with workplace hazards. Option D. Requiring that all worker representatives receive formal accreditation before engaging in OSM's discussions to ensure their competence. The correct answer is C. Ensuring participation is accessible and inclusive to all workers, regardless of their specific training level, to leverage their direct experience with workplace hazards. Explanation. The core principle of worker involvement in an occupational health and safety management system, as mandated by ISO 45001/2018, is to ensure that those who are most exposed to hazards and risks have a voice in how those risks are managed. Clause 6.4 specifically details the requirements for worker participation. This clause emphasizes the need for workers to be involved in all stages of the OSMs, from planning and development to implementation, evaluation, and improvement. This involvement should be at all applicable levels and functions, and where they exist, workers' representatives should be consulted. The mechanisms for involvement must be accessible, understandable, and provide opportunities for workers to contribute their knowledge and experience. This includes their participation in hazard identification, risk assessment, determining control measures, investigating incidents, and reviewing the performance of the OSMs. Effective worker involvement is not merely about consultation. It's about empowerment and shared responsibility for creating a safe and healthy workplace. It fosters a culture of safety where workers feel valued and are active participants in their own well-being. The aim is to ensure that OSM's decisions and actions are practical, relevant, and effectively implemented, drawing on the direct experience of the workforce. Question 12. When an organization modifies its established operational procedures for handling hazardous chemicals, what proactive OH&S management principle, as outlined in ISO 45001/2018, is most critical to prevent the recurrence of incidents related to these changes? Option A. Establishing a comprehensive system for monitoring and measuring OH&S performance related to chemical handling and reporting the results to top management. Option B. Regularly updating the OH&S policy and objectives to reflect the new chemical handling protocols and communicating these changes to all personnel. Option C. Implementing a robust management of change process that includes pre-implementation, hazard identification, and risk assessment for the modified procedures. Option D. Conducting post-incident investigations and implementing corrective actions for any new incidents that arise from the altered chemical handling procedures. The correct answer is C. Implementing a robust management of change process that includes pre-implementation hazard identification and risk assessment for the modified procedures. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 45001-2018 is the integration of occupational health and safety, O&S, management into the overall business strategy and processes. This involves more than just compliance with legal requirements. It necessitates a proactive approach to hazard identification, risk assessment, and the implementation of controls. The Plan Do Check Act (PDCA) cycle is fundamental to the standard's continuous improvement framework. Specifically, the check phase involves monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation of OH&S performance. This includes reviewing incidents, nonconformities, and audit results to identify opportunities for improvement. The Act phase then involves taking actions to address any identified deficiencies and to enhance OH&S performance. Clause 6.1.3 Management of change is crucial because changes in operations, processes, or work environments can introduce new or altered OH&S risks. Therefore, a systematic approach to managing these changes, including hazard identification and risk assessment before the change is implemented, is vital for preventing new OH&S issues. This aligns with the proactive nature of the standard, emphasizing prevention over reaction. Other clauses, such as those related to hazard identification and risk assessment 6.1.2 and operational planning and control 8.1 are also critical, but the question specifically asks about the most effective means to prevent the recurrence of OH&S issues arising from changes to the OH&S management system itself or its operations. Addressing changes before they occur, as mandated by 6.1.3, is the most effective preventative measure in this context. Question 13. Following a near-miss incident involving a temporary worker operating unfamiliar machinery, an organization's OHS lead implementer is reviewing the corrective actions proposed by the Site Safety Committee. The committee suggests mandatory retraining for all personnel operating that specific machinery, regardless of their prior experience. Considering the principles of ISO 45001-2018 for incident investigation and continual improvement, what is the most critical step to ensure the effectiveness of the implemented corrective actions and demonstrate the OSM's continual improvement? Option A. Documenting the retraining sessions and attendance records to comply with internal audit requirements. Option B. Investigating whether the temporary worker's lack of familiarity was due to inadequate initial onboarding or a failure in the contractor management process. Option C. Ensuring the retraining program covers all aspects of machinery operation, including emergency shutdown procedures and lockout/tagout. Option D. Verifying that the implemented retraining has effectively prevented recurrence of similar near misses or incidents involving that machinery. The correct answer is D. Verifying that the implemented retraining has effectively prevented recurrence of similar near misses or incidents involving that machinery. Explanation. ISO 45001-2018 Clause 10.2. Continual improvement mandates that an organization shall continually improve the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the occupational health and safety management system. Incident investigation is a critical component of this continual improvement process. The primary objective of investigating incidents, including near misses, is not to assign blame, but to identify root causes and contributing factors. This allows for the implementation of corrective actions that prevent recurrence. A systematic approach to incident investigation, as outlined by the standard, involves gathering information, analyzing the information to determine causes, identifying corrective actions, implementing these actions, and then reviewing their effectiveness. This review is crucial for demonstrating that the implemented controls have indeed reduced the risk of similar incidents. The effectiveness of corrective actions is directly linked to the thoroughness of the root cause analysis and the suitability of the actions chosen to address those causes. Without this feedback loop, the organization cannot be assured that its OSMs is effectively preventing workplace injuries and ill health. Therefore, verifying that the implemented corrective actions have effectively prevented recurrence is a key step in the continual improvement cycle driven by incident investigation. Question 14. A manufacturing company, Veridian Dynamics, is implementing an ISO 45001-2018 compliant occupational health and safety management system. The leadership team is committed to fostering genuine worker participation, considering the requirements of Clause 5.4 of the standard. Which of the following actions would most effectively demonstrate the organization's commitment to integrating worker input into the OH&S management system's design and continuous improvement? Option A. Providing all workers with access to the organization's hazard register and inviting them to submit suggestions for improvement through a suggestion box. Option B. Posting OH&S policy and objectives on the company intranet and holding quarterly town hall meetings where employees can ask questions about safety performance. Option C. Establishing a dedicated OH&S committee with representation from various departments and empowering them to review incident reports, propose control measures, and provide feedback on new procedures before implementation. Option D. Appointing a full-time OH&S manager responsible for all aspects of the management system, including worker consultation, and delegating the task of collecting worker feedback to this individual. The correct answer is C. Establishing a dedicated OH&S committee with representation from various departments and empowering them to review incident reports, propose control measures, and provide feedback on new procedures before implementation. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 45001-2018, particularly concerning leadership and worker participation, is to ensure that the occupational health and safety management system is integrated into the organization's overall business processes, and that workers at all levels are actively involved in its development, implementation, and improvement. Clause 5.4. Consultation and participation of workers mandates that the organization shall establish, implement, and maintain one or more processes for consultation and participation of workers at all applicable levels, and where they exist, workers' representatives. This clause emphasizes the importance of timely, understandable, and relevant information being provided to workers and their representatives concerning the OH&S management system, hazards, risks, controls, and changes. It also requires that workers' representatives be identified and consulted on relevant OH&S matters, and that workers themselves be encouraged to participate in the OH&S decision-making processes. The effectiveness of an OH&S management system is significantly enhanced when workers, who are closest to the operational hazards, are empowered to contribute their knowledge and experience. This leads to more practical and sustainable risk controls and a stronger safety culture. Therefore, the most effective approach to foster meaningful worker participation in the OH&S management system, in line with ISO 45001, involves actively seeking and incorporating their input into the design and ongoing improvement of controls and processes. This goes beyond mere information dissemination to genuine collaboration. Question 15. An organization is undergoing a strategic review of its operational efficiency and is considering adopting a new manufacturing methodology that involves significant changes to work processes and the introduction of novel machinery. As a lead implementer for ISO 45001-2018, how should top management demonstrate their commitment to occupational health and safety within this context, specifically concerning the integration of the OH&S management system into the organization's business processes? Option A. Focusing primarily on the productivity gains of the new methodology and addressing any OH&S concerns only if a significant incident occurs, thereby treating OH&S as a reactive measure. Option B. Issuing a company-wide memo announcing the new manufacturing methodology and stating that all employees must adhere to existing safety guidelines without specific mention of OH&S integration into the new processes. Option C. Ensuring that OH&S risk assessments for the new methodology and machinery are completed and reviewed by the OH&S committee before any implementation begins, and that OH&S performance indicators related to the new processes are included in senior management performance evaluations. Option D. Delegating the responsibility for ensuring OH&S compliance with the new methodology solely to the newly appointed safety officer, with minimal direct involvement from top management. The correct answer is C. Ensuring that OH&S risk assessments for the new methodology and machinery are completed and reviewed by the OH&S committee before any implementation begins, and that OH&S performance indicators related to the new processes are included in senior management performance evaluations. Explanation: the core of ISO 45001, 2018 Clause 5. 1. Leadership and worker participation emphasizes the commitment of top management to the OH&S management system. This commitment is demonstrated through various actions, including establishing the OH&S policy, assigning roles and responsibilities, and ensuring the availability of resources. A key aspect is the integration of the OH&S management system into the organization's business processes. This means that OH&S considerations are not treated as a separate, add-on function, but are woven into the fabric of how the organization operates, makes decisions, and plans for the future. For instance, when a new project is initiated, OH&S risks and controls must be considered as part of the project planning and execution, rather than being addressed as an afterthought. Similarly, performance reviews for managers should include their contribution to OH&S objectives. This integration ensures that OH&S is a strategic priority, supported by the necessary structures and resources, and that top management actively promotes a culture where OH&S is valued and prioritized at all levels. The standard requires top management to ensure that the OH&S policy is communicated and understood, and that OH&S objectives are established and are consistent with the policy. Furthermore, top management must ensure that relevant OH&S requirements are integrated into the organization's business processes. Question 16. A manufacturing firm operating under ISO 45001, 2018 has a documented procedure for lockout/tagout (LOTO) that has been in use for 5 years. Recent internal audits have highlighted minor deviations in its application, and a new piece of machinery has been introduced with a different LOTO mechanism. The OHS manager is tasked with updating this procedure. Considering the requirements for control of documented information within the standard, what is the paramount consideration during this update process to ensure the OHS management system remains effective? Option A. Immediately archiving the old procedure and publishing the updated version to all relevant departments without further review to expedite the process. Option B. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment of all potential OHS hazards in the organization before any document updates are finalized. Option C. Focusing solely on incorporating the new machinery's LOTO mechanism into the existing document, without reviewing the overall effectiveness of the current procedure. Option D. Ensuring the revised procedure is readily available, protected from loss or misuse, and clearly reflects the current operational context and regulatory compliance, including the new machinery's requirements. Correct answer is D. Ensuring the revised procedure is readily available, protected from loss or misuse, and clearly reflects the current operational context and regulatory compliance, including the new machinery's requirements. Explanation: the core of managing documented information in an ISO 45001, 2018 system, particularly when updating it, lies in ensuring its continued suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness. Clause 7. 5. 3. Control of documented information mandates that organizations must protect documented information from loss, inappropriate use, and compromise. When updating a procedure, for instance, the process should involve a review to confirm it still aligns with current operational realities, legislative requirements, such as local health and safety regulations that might have changed, and the organization's OHS policy and objectives. The updated document needs to be approved by appropriate personnel, ensuring competence and authority. Furthermore, it must be made available and suitable for use where and when it is needed. Crucially, the organization must retain appropriate documented information as evidence of conformity, e.g., records of reviews, approvals, and changes, and retain obsolete documented information in a suitable form, often with clear identification that it is no longer current, to prevent unintended use. The act of updating a document is not merely a textual change. It's a control process that maintains the integrity and relevance of the OHS management system. Therefore, the most critical aspect of updating documented information is ensuring its continued fitness for purpose within the established OHS management system framework, which encompasses its availability, protection, and the management of changes to maintain its validity and effectiveness. Question 17. An organization is experiencing persistent issues with airborne particulate exposure for its assembly line workers, despite rigorous training and strict enforcement of existing operating procedures. The lead OH&S implementer is tasked with recommending a more robust control measure to mitigate this risk, aligning with the principles of ISO 45001-2018. Which of the following proposed improvements would represent the most effective advancement in the hierarchy of controls for this specific situation? Option A. Developing a new, more detailed set of standard operating procedures with enhanced visual aids. Option B. Mandating the use of higher-grade respiratory protection equipment for all affected personnel. Option C. Implementing a mandatory rotation schedule for workers to reduce their cumulative exposure time. Option D. Installing a localized exhaust ventilation system at each workstation to capture airborne particulates at the source. The correct answer is D. Installing a localized exhaust ventilation system at each workstation to capture airborne particulates at the source. Explanation. The hierarchy of controls is a fundamental principle in occupational health and safety, aiming to eliminate or reduce hazards. ISO 45001-2018 Clause 8. 1. 2. Hazard identification and risk assessment mandates that organizations determine hazards and assess risks to the OH&S management system. This involves considering the hierarchy of controls. Elimination is the most effective control, followed by substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, and finally, personal protective equipment, PPE. Engineering controls involve physical changes to the workplace, work processes, or equipment to isolate people from hazards. Examples include ventilation systems, machine guarding, and ergonomic workstation design. Administrative controls involve changes in work procedures, such as job rotation, safety training, and signage. PPE is the least effective as it relies on the worker's consistent and correct use. Therefore, when a lead implementer is evaluating the effectiveness of existing controls, prioritizing a control that physically isolates workers from the hazard through design modifications represents a higher level of control than implementing new procedural changes or requiring additional personal protective equipment. The scenario describes a situation where existing administrative controls, strict adherence to operating procedures, are insufficient, and the focus is on improving the physical environment or process to reduce exposure. Implementing improved local exhaust ventilation directly addresses the physical pathway of the hazard, airborne particles, and is an engineering control which is inherently more robust and less reliant on human behavior than administrative controls or PPE. Question 18. An organization has recently experienced a series of minor incidents, including several instances of employees reporting musculoskeletal discomfort after performing tasks previously considered low risk. During the scheduled management review, the top management team is presented with data showing an increase in these reported discomforts. Considering the requirements of ISO 45001-2018 Clause 9. 3. What is the most appropriate action for top management to take to ensure the ongoing effectiveness of the OHS management system in addressing this trend? Option A. Mandate additional mandatory safety training for all employees, focusing on general OHS principles, without specific regard to the nature of the reported discomforts. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive review of risk assessments for tasks identified as contributing to musculoskeletal discomfort, ensuring controls are adequate and exploring opportunities for ergonomic improvements and job rotation. Option C. Defer the discussion of musculoskeletal discomfort to the next operational meeting, as it is not yet a critical incident that has resulted in lost time. Option D. Update the OHS policy to include a general statement about promoting employee well-being, without implementing specific corrective actions or further investigation into the root causes. Correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive review of risk assessments for tasks identified as contributing to musculoskeletal discomfort, ensuring controls are adequate and exploring opportunities for ergonomic improvements in job rotation. Explanation: the management review process in ISO 45001-2018, as detailed in Clause 9.3, is a critical element for ensuring the ongoing suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the occupational health and safety management system. The standard mandates that top management shall review the organization's OHS management system at planned intervals. This review must consider inputs such as changes in external and internal issues relevant to the OSMs, information on the performance of the OSMs including trends in incident rates, occupational diseases, and near misses, results of consultations and participation, and information from interested parties. It also requires consideration of opportunities for improvement, adequacy of resources, and the effectiveness of actions taken to address risks and opportunities. The outputs of the management review must include decisions and actions related to opportunities for improvement, any need for changes to the OHS management system, and resource needs. The effectiveness of the OSMs is determined by its ability to achieve the organization's OHS policy and objectives, and its resilience in addressing changing circumstances. When evaluating the effectiveness, a key aspect is assessing how well the system integrates with other business processes and how it contributes to the overall strategic direction of the organization. This involves looking beyond mere compliance and examining the proactive measures taken to prevent injury and ill health, and to provide safe and healthy workplaces. The review should also consider the organization's performance against its OHS objectives and targets, and the progress made in implementing action plans. Furthermore, the management review should assess the effectiveness of the communication strategies for OHS information and the outcomes of previous management reviews. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the OSMs remains fit for purpose and capable of driving continuous improvement in OHS performance. Question 19. A manufacturing firm, Ether Dynamics, experienced a recurring issue where safety guards on their automated assembly line were found dislodged, leading to near-miss incidents. An internal audit identified this as a nonconformity. The initial corrective action involved retightening the guards and issuing a verbal warning to the operator on duty. However, the problem persisted. A subsequent investigation revealed that the vibration from the machinery, combined with a design flaw in the guard's locking mechanism, was the actual root cause. Which of the following best represents the most effective corrective action in accordance with ISO 45001-2018 principles for preventing recurrence? Option A. Document the nonconformity in the OHS management system records and instruct maintenance to retighten the guards whenever they are found loose. Option B. Replace the entire automated assembly line with a newer model that has integrated safety features. Option C. Conduct additional training for all operators on the importance of checking safety guards before each shift. Option D. Modify the guard's locking mechanism to incorporate a more robust fastening system and implement a schedule for regular vibration monitoring of the assembly line. The correct answer is D. Modify the guard's locking mechanism to incorporate a more robust fastening system and implement a schedule for regular vibration monitoring of the assembly line. Explanation: the core principle behind effective corrective action in an ISO 45001-2018 management system is to prevent recurrence. This involves understanding the root cause of a nonconformity, not just its symptoms. A nonconformity is defined as a failure to meet one or more requirements of the occupational health and safety management system. When a nonconformity is identified, the organization must take action to control and correct it. Beyond immediate correction, the standard mandates that the organization investigate the root cause of the nonconformity. This investigation should determine why the nonconformity occurred in the first place. Based on the identified root cause, the organization must implement corrective actions to eliminate the cause and prevent the nonconformity from happening again. The effectiveness of these corrective actions must then be reviewed. This review process is crucial to ensure that the actions taken have indeed addressed the root cause and have not introduced new issues. Therefore, the most critical aspect of corrective action, as per ISO 45001-2018, is the systematic process of identifying and addressing the underlying causes to ensure the long-term effectiveness of the OHS management system and prevent future occurrences. This aligns with Clause 10.2 Nonconformity and Corrective Action. Question 20. A manufacturing facility has implemented a new automated packaging machine, and several operators have reported minor hand injuries, specifically abrasions and contusions, from contact with a sharp edge on the machine's conveyor belt assembly. An initial assessment identified the immediate cause as the protruding edge. As the lead implementer for the ISO 45001-2018 OSMs, you are tasked with conducting a deeper root cause analysis to prevent future incidents. Which of the following represents the most probable underlying systemic cause that an effective root cause analysis would uncover, aligning with the principles of proactive hazard control and incident investigation as outlined in ISO 45001-2018? Option A. Environmental factors within the production area, such as poor lighting, contributing to the incidents. Option B. A general lack of adherence to personal protective equipment (PPE) policies by the affected workers. Option C. Insufficient operator training on the specific operational procedures for the new automated packaging machine. Option D. Inadequate design verification processes that failed to identify and mitigate potential pinch points or sharp edges before the machine's commissioning. The correct answer is D. Inadequate design verification processes that failed to identify and mitigate potential pinch points or sharp edges before the machine's commissioning. Explanation. The scenario describes a recurring issue of workers experiencing minor abrasions and contusions on their hands while operating a new automated packaging machine. The initial investigation identified the immediate cause as contact with a protruding edge on a component of the machine's conveyor belt system. However, a more thorough root cause analysis is required to prevent recurrence. ISO 45001-2018 Clause 8. 1. 2. Concerning hazard identification and risk assessment, and Clause 10. 2. Concerning incident investigation and corrective actions, mandate that organizations determine the root cause of incidents to prevent them from happening again. Techniques like the 5 whys or fishbone diagram Ishikawa are commonly used for this purpose. The 5 whys involves repeatedly asking why to drill down to the underlying cause. In this case, asking why the edge protrudes might lead to questions about design specifications, manufacturing tolerances, material selection, or maintenance procedures. A fishbone diagram would categorize potential causes into areas like man, machine, method, material, measurement, and environment. Considering the nature of a protruding edge on a new machine, a likely root cause would relate to deficiencies in the design or manufacturing process rather than operational methods or environmental factors. Specifically, a failure in the design review process to identify and rectify this potential pinch point, or a deviation from specified manufacturing tolerances during production, would be fundamental causes. These point to a systemic issue within the organization's engineering and quality control processes for new equipment. Therefore, the most appropriate root cause would stem from inadequate design verification or quality control during the manufacturing phase, ensuring that the machine meets safety requirements before deployment. Question 21. When establishing an occupational health and safety management system in alignment with ISO 45001-2018, what is the primary objective of the systematic identification and consideration of both internal and external contextual factors relevant to the organization's purpose and its OHS management system's intended outcomes? Option A. Establish a framework for continuous improvement by benchmarking OHS performance against industry best practices and competitor activities. Option B. To inform the determination of interested parties and their requirements, thereby shaping the scope and strategic direction of the OHS management system. Option C. To facilitate the development of a detailed operational control plan that addresses all identified hazards and risks at the workplace level. Option D. To ensure compliance with all applicable national OHS legislation and international standards through a comprehensive risk assessment process. The correct answer is B. To inform the determination of interested parties and their requirements, thereby shaping the scope and strategic direction of the OHS management system. Explanation. The determination of internal and external issues is a foundational step in establishing an occupational health and safety OS management system according to ISO 45001-2018. Clause 4. 1. Understanding the organization and its context mandates that an organization shall determine external issues that are relevant to its purpose and that affect its ability to achieve the intended outcome of its OHS management system. It also requires determining internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and that affect its ability to achieve the intended outcome. S. Of its OHS management system. These issues can encompass a wide range of factors, including legal and regulatory requirements, technological advancements, market conditions, cultural aspects, social expectations, and the organization's own operational characteristics, resources, knowledge, and performance. The process involves a comprehensive analysis, often utilizing tools like PESTLE, political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental, for external issues, and SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, or similar frameworks for internal issues. The identified issues inform the scope of the OHS management system and the planning of actions to address risks and opportunities. For instance, a new national regulation on hazardous substance exposure limits, an external issue, would necessitate a review of internal chemical handling procedures and worker training. Similarly, a high employee turnover rate due to perceived unsafe working conditions, an internal issue, would require investigation into management practices and safety culture. The goal is to gain a holistic understanding of the operating environment and the organization's internal landscape to effectively manage OHS risks and achieve its OHS objectives. Question 22. Following a near-miss incident where a chemical mixing operator nearly inhaled hazardous fumes due to a ventilation system failure at a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility, what is the most comprehensive approach to implementing improvement actions according to ISO 45001/2018 principles, considering potential legal implications related to COSH, control of substances hazardous to health regulations in the UK? Option A. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis of the ventilation system failure, implement immediate engineering controls to restore adequate ventilation, develop enhanced training on emergency procedures for fume exposure, and subsequently evaluate the effectiveness of these measures by monitoring air quality and reviewing incident reports over a 6-month period. Option B. Immediately replace the entire ventilation system with a newer model, issue a general safety bulletin to all staff about fume hazards, and document the replacement in the maintenance log without further investigation. Option C. Focus solely on retraining the operator on proper chemical handling techniques, assuming the ventilation failure was an isolated anomaly, and wait for another incident to occur before reviewing the system. Option D. Conduct a superficial review of the incident, implement a temporary fix for the ventilation system, and rely on personal protective equipment, PPE, as the primary control measure without assessing its long-term suitability or the system's underlying integrity. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis of the ventilation system failure, implement immediate engineering controls to restore adequate ventilation, develop enhanced training on emergency procedures for fume exposure, and subsequently evaluate the effectiveness of these measures by monitoring air quality and reviewing incident reports over a 6-month period. Explanation. The core of implementing improvement actions within an ISO 45001/2018 management system lies in a systematic approach that addresses the root causes of nonconformities and opportunities for improvement. When an incident occurs, such as a minor laceration to a worker at a fabrication plant due to a poorly guarded rotating machine, the process begins with immediate response and containment. Following this, a thorough investigation is conducted to identify not just the immediate causes, but also the underlying systemic deficiencies. This investigation would involve reviewing operational procedures, maintenance logs, worker training records, and the effectiveness of existing controls. The goal is to determine the root cause, which might be inadequate risk assessment for that specific task, insufficient guarding design, lack of proper lockout/tagout procedures during maintenance, or inadequate competency assessment for operators. Once the root cause, S, are identified, appropriate actions are planned. These actions must be designed to eliminate the root cause and prevent recurrence. This involves selecting solutions that are effective and proportionate to the risk. For the laceration incident, potential actions could include redesigning the machine guard to fully enclose the rotating parts, implementing a stricter permit-to-work system for operating or maintaining that specific machinery, or enhancing the operator training program to include specific hazard recognition for rotating equipment. Crucially, ISO 45001/2018, particularly Clause 10.2, emphasizes the need to evaluate the effectiveness of these corrective actions. This evaluation is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. The management system needs to provide mechanisms to track the implementation of these actions, monitor their impact on reducing risks, and verify that they have achieved the desired outcome of preventing similar incidents. This might involve conducting follow-up inspections, reviewing incident data for trends, and soliciting feedback from workers directly involved in the process. The organization must also consider any legal or other requirements that might be relevant, such as specific machine guarding standards or workplace safety regulations enforced by bodies like OSHA in the United States or HSE in the United Kingdom, ensuring that the corrective actions align with or exceed these external obligations. The systematic review of the effectiveness of these implemented actions is fundamental to the continual improvement of the OH&S management system. Question 23. A multinational logistics company operating in several countries with varying occupational health and safety legislation is implementing an ISO 45001-2018 compliant OSMS. The organization identifies a significant risk associated with manual handling injuries across its warehousing operations. To effectively address this risk and ensure compliance with diverse national labor laws regarding worker safety, which approach to resource allocation for the OSMS would be most aligned with the principles of ISO 45001-2018 Clause 7. 1. 3. Support and foster robust continual improvement. Option A. Prioritize the acquisition of advanced automated sorting systems for all warehouses, deferring any specific training or ergonomic assessments until the automation project is fully implemented to maximize efficiency gains. Option B. Allocate a dedicated budget for ergonomic assessments, specialized training on safe lifting techniques, and the procurement of mechanical aids for high-risk manual handling tasks, ensuring flexibility to adapt to country-specific legal requirements and technological advancements. Option C. Focus solely on updating the OHS policy to reflect a commitment to reducing manual handling injuries, assuming that employee awareness will naturally lead to improved practices without specific resource allocation for tools or training. Option D. Assign existing warehouse supervisors to oversee manual handling safety initiatives, relying on their general knowledge and providing them with a minimal budget for basic safety posters and occasional toolbox talks. The correct answer is B. Allocate a dedicated budget for ergonomic assessments, specialized training on safe lifting techniques, and the procurement of mechanical aids for high-risk manual handling tasks, ensuring flexibility to adapt to country-specific legal requirements and technological advancements. Explanation: ISO 45001-2018 Clause 7. 1. 3. Support mandates that an organization shall determine and provide the resources needed for the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of the occupational health and safety management system. This includes human resources and the necessary infrastructure. When allocating resources for an OSMS, a lead implementer must consider not only the immediate operational needs, but also the strategic requirements for long-term effectiveness and legal compliance. For instance, a manufacturing firm operating under strict emissions regulations, such as those stipulated by the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, in the United States or similar national bodies, must allocate resources for monitoring, reporting, and potentially upgrading equipment to meet or exceed these legal obligations. This goes beyond merely assigning personnel. It involves budgeting for specialized training, purchasing or maintaining monitoring devices, and potentially investing in new technologies or process modifications. The effectiveness of the OSMS is directly tied to the adequacy and appropriateness of these resources. Failing to adequately resource a critical area, such as the provision of appropriate personal protective equipment, PPE, or the maintenance of safety-critical machinery, can lead to nonconformities, increased incident rates, and legal repercussions. Therefore, resource allocation must be a proactive and comprehensive process, informed by risk assessments, legal requirements, and the organization's overall strategic objectives for health and safety performance. Question 24. An auditor reviewing the documented information control processes at a manufacturing facility that has implemented ISO 45001-2018 identifies that, while the master list of all OSMS documents is meticulously maintained and updated, the actual physical copies of certain critical safety operating procedures, stored in various production areas, are not consistently marked with revision status or date of issue. This creates a potential for workers to inadvertently use outdated versions. Considering the intent of ISO 45001, 2018 Clause 7. 5. Which aspect of controlling documented information is most critically deficient in this scenario? Option A. Implementing a robust document retention and disposition policy that addresses the life cycle of all OSMS-related records. Option B. Ensuring that documented information is protected, including protection against loss, misuse, or deterioration, and maintaining its integrity. Option C. Establishing a clear and universally understood document identification system that includes revision control and date of issue for all OSMS documents. Option D. Defining the scope of documented information required for the OSMS and ensuring its availability and suitability for use. The correct answer is B. Ensuring that documented information is protected, including protection against loss, misuse, or deterioration, and maintaining its integrity. Explanation: ISO 45001, 2018 Clause 7. 5. Control of documented information outlines the requirements for an organization's occupational health and safety management system, OSMS, to maintain and control documented information. This includes identifying, creating, updating, and retaining documented information. The standard requires that documented information necessary for the effectiveness of the OSMS be identified and controlled. This control involves ensuring that documented information is accessible, identifiable, and suitable for its intended use. Furthermore, it must be protected from loss, improper use, or deterioration. The standard also specifies requirements for the identification, storage, protection, retrieval, retention, and disposition of documented information. When controlling documented information, an organization must consider the requirements for its creation and updating, including appropriate identification, format, and media. The organization must also control changes, including reviewing and approving changes, and taking action to prevent the unintended use of obsolete documented information. The intent is to ensure that all relevant documented information, such as procedures, policies, work instructions, and records, is current, accurate, and available to those who need it, while also managing historical information appropriately. This directly supports the principle of continual improvement by ensuring that decisions and actions are based on up-to-date and reliable information. Question 25. Consider a multinational corporation with manufacturing facilities in Germany, Brazil, and India, and a research and development center in Canada. The organization has also voluntarily adopted a corporate social responsibility charter that mandates specific emission reduction targets exceeding local legal requirements in all operating regions. Which of the following approaches most effectively ensures the comprehensive identification and documentation of all applicable legal and other requirements for its ISO 45001, 2018 management system? Option A. Engaging regional legal counsel in each country to identify national laws and regulations, and relying on the CSR department's internal tracking of the corporate charter's commitments. Option B. Tasking each facility manager with independently identifying relevant local laws and the CSR charter's impact, then compiling these findings without a centralized verification process. Option C. Establishing a dedicated cross-functional team, including representatives from legal, operations, and sustainability departments, to systematically research national and subnational legislation, industry standards, and the organization's voluntary commitments, maintaining a centralized, auditable register. Option D. Conducting a single, broad legal review across all operating countries, and assuming the CSR Charter's targets are the only other requirements to consider. The correct answer is A. Engaging regional legal counsel in each country to identify national laws and regulations, and relying on the CSR department's internal tracking of the corporate charter's commitments. Explanation: the process of determining legal and other requirements for an occupational health and safety management system, as outlined in ISO 45001-2018, involves a systematic approach to identify all applicable obligations. This includes not only statutory laws and regulations enforced by governmental bodies, such as workplace safety acts, environmental protection laws, and labor standards, but also non-governmental requirements. These other requirements can stem from agreements with stakeholders, industry codes of practice, voluntary standards adopted by the organization, and even internal policies and procedures that set higher standards than legal minimums. The key is to establish a comprehensive register of these requirements that is regularly reviewed and updated to reflect changes in legislation, industry practices, and organizational operations. This register forms the foundation for setting OH&S objectives and planning actions to meet these obligations, ensuring legal compliance and fostering continuous improvement in OH&S performance. An organization must consider its specific context, activities, products, and services when identifying these requirements. For instance, a manufacturing facility in a particular jurisdiction will have different legal and other requirements than a software development company operating remotely, even if both aim to implement ISO 45001. The lead implementer's role is to guide the organization through this identification process, ensuring thoroughness and accuracy. Question 26. When establishing an occupational health and safety management system in accordance with ISO 45001-2018, a lead implementer is tasked with defining the organization's operational environment, which fundamental aspect of the context of the organization, Clause 4.1, most directly informs the subsequent identification of interested parties and their needs and expectations. 4.2, thereby shaping the overall OH&S policy and objectives. Option A. Identifying all regulatory requirements and legal obligations pertaining to occupational health and safety that the organization must comply with. Option B. Establishing a comprehensive list of all potential hazards and risks associated with the organization's activities, products, and services. Option C. Determining the internal and external issues that are relevant to the organization's purpose and affect its ability to achieve the intended outcomes of its OH&S management system. Option D. Defining the organization's scope of the OH&S management system, including the boundaries and applicability of the system. The correct answer is C. Determining the internal and external issues that are relevant to the organization's purpose and affect its ability to achieve the intended outcomes of its OH&S management system. Explanation. The context of the organization, as defined in ISO 45001-2018 Clause 4.1, requires an organization to determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and that affect its ability to achieve the intended outcome of its occupational health and safety O&S management system. These issues can impact the OH&S performance of the organization and the effectiveness of the OH&S management system. Clause 4.2, on the other hand, focuses on understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. While both are crucial for establishing the OH&S management system, the primary driver for understanding the organization's operating environment, its challenges, opportunities, and constraints, which directly inform the OH&S objectives and strategies, stems from the determination of internal and external issues. This proactive identification of factors influencing the organization's OH&S landscape is fundamental to establishing a robust and relevant OH&S management system. The consideration of interested parties' needs and expectations is a subsequent step that builds upon this foundational understanding of the organizational context. Therefore, the initial and most foundational step in understanding the context of the organization for ISO 45001-2018 implementation is the comprehensive identification and analysis of relevant internal and external issues that can impact the organization's OH&S performance. Question 27. When an organization is concurrently implementing an occupational health and safety management system, OSMS, based on ISO 45001-2018, alongside its established quality management system, QMS, conforming to ISO 9001-2015, and environmental management system, EMS, conforming to ISO 14001-2015, which fundamental principle of the high-level structure, HLS, is most critical for achieving effective integration and minimizing redundant efforts during the initial planning phase. Option A. Focusing exclusively on the specific requirements of ISO 45001-2018 during the initial planning, deferring any integration considerations with ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 until after the OSMS is fully established. Option B. establishing separate documented information systems for each management system to maintain distinct records and avoid any potential overlap in procedural documentation. Option C, leveraging the common clause structure and terminology to consolidate the understanding of the organization and its context, including the identification of interested parties and their requirements across all three management systems. Option D, prioritizing the development of unique operational controls for each management system to ensure specialized hazard and risk mitigation strategies are implemented independently. The correct answer is C, leveraging the common clause structure and terminology to consolidate the understanding of the organization and its context, including the identification of interested parties and their requirements across all three management systems. Explanation: the high-level structure, HLS, also known as Annex SL, provides a common framework for all new and revised ISO management system standards. This harmonization is crucial for organizations that implement multiple management systems, such as those for quality, ISO 9001, environmental management, ISO 14001, and occupational health and safety, ISO 45001. The HLS ensures that common clauses, terms, and definitions are consistently applied across these standards. When integrating an OHS management system with existing quality and environmental systems, a lead implementer must leverage this common structure. Clause 4 of ISO 45001, context of the organization, is particularly relevant for integration as it requires understanding the organization's needs and expectations, including those of interested parties. Clause 4. 1. Understanding the organization and its context mandates the determination of external and internal issues relevant to the OSMs. This directly aligns with similar requirements in ISO 9001, Clause 4. 1 and ISO 14001, Clause 4. 1, which focus on understanding the organization and its context for quality and environmental aspects, respectively. By analyzing these commonalities, an organization can effectively combine the planning and strategic elements of each system, avoiding duplication of effort and ensuring a cohesive approach. For example, the process of identifying interested parties and their requirements in ISO 45001, Clause 4. 2, can be consolidated with the stakeholder analysis performed for ISO 9001 and ISO 14001, thereby streamlining the initial phases of implementation and ensuring a unified understanding of organizational objectives. Question 28. A manufacturing firm has introduced a closed-loop transfer system for highly corrosive chemicals as an engineering control. To further strengthen the safety of this operation and manage any residual risks associated with maintenance or unforeseen circumstances, which administrative control would be most effective in complementing the existing engineering measure? Option A. Mandate the use of specific chemical-resistant gloves and full-face shields for all personnel entering the chemical handling area. Option B. Implement a strict schedule for routine visual inspections of the transfer system's seals and connections. Option C. Develop and deliver a detailed training program covering the new chemical transfer procedure, safe work practices, and emergency response for spills. Option D. Establish a policy that limits the duration of individual exposure to the chemical handling zone to a maximum of 2 hours per shift. The correct answer is C. Develop and deliver a detailed training program covering the new chemical transfer procedure, safe work practices, and emergency response for spills. Explanation: the hierarchy of controls is a fundamental principle in occupational health and safety, prioritizing control measures from most effective to least effective. Elimination, the most effective, removes the hazard entirely. Substitution replaces a hazardous substance or process with a less hazardous one. Engineering controls isolate people from the hazard through physical means, such as machine guarding or ventilation systems. Administrative controls modify work practices and procedures, including training, signage, and job rotation. Personal protective equipment, PPE, is the least effective, as it relies on the worker to use it correctly and does not remove the hazard itself. In this scenario, the company is implementing a new procedure for handling corrosive chemicals. The introduction of a closed-loop system for transferring these chemicals represents an engineering control, as it physically isolates the workers from the hazardous substance during the transfer process. This method directly addresses the hazard at its source by preventing exposure through containment, making it a more robust solution than relying solely on worker behavior or protective gear. The question asks for the most appropriate administrative control to complement this engineering measure, considering the residual risk of potential spills or contact during maintenance or non-routine operations. A comprehensive training program on the new procedure, including emergency response protocols for spills, directly supports the safe use and maintenance of the engineering control and addresses the remaining risks associated with the chemical handling. This training empowers workers with the knowledge and skills to manage potential incidents, thereby reinforcing the overall safety of the operation. Question 29. When preparing the internal audit program for an organization operating in the chemical manufacturing sector, a lead implementer is determining the criteria for selecting and assigning auditors. Considering the organization's commitment to meeting regulatory compliance, including the stringent requirements of REACH, registration, evaluation, authorization and restriction of chemicals, and the specific handling protocols for hazardous materials as mandated by national legislation, which factor is most critical for ensuring the competence of the audit team in assessing the OHS management system's effectiveness against these specific obligations? Option A. A minimum of 5 years of service within the organization, indicating familiarity with internal processes and personnel. Option B. Extensive experience in general management within the manufacturing industry, irrespective of specific OHS or auditing qualifications. Option C. Proven ability to communicate findings clearly and concisely to senior management during audit reporting. Option D. Demonstrated knowledge of chemical safety regulations, OHS management system principles, and auditing techniques relevant to the sector. The correct answer is D. Demonstrated knowledge of chemical safety regulations, OHS management system principles, and auditing techniques relevant to the sector. Explanation. The internal audit process, as guided by ISO 45001-2018 Clause 9. 2. Requires a systematic, independent, and documented approach to gathering information about the effectiveness of the occupational health and safety management system. When planning these audits, a key consideration is the competence of the auditors. ISO 45001-2018 Annex A, 16. 1. 2. Highlights the need for auditors to possess the necessary knowledge and skills to conduct audits effectively. This includes understanding audit principles, methods, and techniques, as well as having specific knowledge of the organization's context, its OHS risks and opportunities, and relevant legal and other requirements applicable to its operations, such as the control of substances hazardous to health (COSH), regulations in the UK or OSHA standards in the US. The selection of audit topics should be based on the performance and effectiveness of the OHS management system, changes affecting the organization, and the results of previous audits. Therefore, an auditor's competence must encompass both general auditing skills and specific knowledge relevant to the organization's OHS performance and legal obligations. Focusing solely on the number of nonconformities from previous audits would be insufficient, as it doesn't guarantee the auditor's ability to assess the system's overall effectiveness or compliance with all applicable requirements. Similarly, relying solely on the auditor's tenure within the organization or their general management experience does not ensure they possess the specific OHS and auditing expertise required. The ability to communicate effectively is crucial for an auditor, but it is a skill that supports the application of their knowledge and competence, rather than being the sole determinant of their suitability for planning and conducting OHS audits. Question 30. An organization operating a complex chemical processing plant has been diligently tracking its occupational health and safety (O&S) performance. They meticulously record all lost time injuries and near misses. However, during an internal audit, it was noted that while the number of reported near misses has increased significantly, the rate of lost time injuries has remained relatively stable. The management team is questioning the value of tracking the near misses if the ultimate goal of reducing injuries isn't immediately apparent. As an OH&S lead implementer, how would you explain the significance of this trend in relation to evaluating the effectiveness of OH&S controls and performance, considering the principles of ISO 45001-2018? Option A. The organization should disregard the near-miss data as it is not a direct measure of injury reduction, and instead focus exclusively on the lagging indicator of lost time injuries to assess OH&S performance. Option B. Stable rate of lost time injuries indicates that the current OH and S controls are sufficient and no further action is required, as the primary lagging indicator shows no deterioration. Option C. The rise in near misses is a negative sign, directly correlating with a potential breakdown in safety procedures, and the organization should immediately halt near-miss reporting to focus solely on preventing lost time injuries. Option D. The increase in near misses, coupled with stable lost time injuries, suggests that the organization's proactive hazard identification and reporting systems are functioning effectively, providing valuable data for preventing future incidents, thereby indicating an improvement in the early stages of OH and S control effectiveness. The correct answer is D. The increase in near misses, coupled with stable lost time injuries, suggests that the organization's proactive hazard identification and reporting systems are functioning effectively, providing valuable data for preventing future incidents, thereby indicating an improvement in the early stages of OH and S control effectiveness. Explanation: ISO 45001, 2018 Clause 9. 1 outlines the need for organizations to determine what needs to be monitored and measured, including their OH and S performance and the effectiveness of OH and S controls. It also specifies the methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation, as well as the timing and the persons responsible. The clause emphasizes that the results of the analysis and evaluation should be used to evaluate OH and S performance and the effectiveness of the OH and S management system, and to identify opportunities for improvement. When an organization is evaluating the effectiveness of its OH and S controls, it must consider both leading and lagging indicators. Leading indicators are proactive measures that help prevent incidents, such as the percentage of planned safety inspections completed, the number of safety observations reported and addressed, and the frequency of employee participation in safety training. Lagging indicators are reactive measures that reflect past performance, such as the number of lost time injuries, the number of recordable incidents, and the severity rate of injuries. A comprehensive evaluation requires a balance of both types to provide a complete picture of OH and S performance and control effectiveness. The analysis and evaluation of OH and S performance information is crucial for the organization to understand trends, identify systemic issues, and drive continual improvement of the OH and S management system. This process supports informed decision-making regarding the allocation of resources and the implementation of corrective actions, thereby enhancing the overall safety culture and reducing workplace risks.